if you're surrounded by people who do have that insight, who do think in different ways, I think the catalyst is able to, gather that and do something with it.
Hi, I'm Tracy Lovejoy.
And I'm Shannon Lucas. We are the co-CEOs of Catalyst Constellations, which is dedicated to empowering catalysts to create bold, powerful change in the world.
This is our podcast, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burn Out, where we speak with Catalyst executives about ways to successfully lead transformation in large organizations. And today, Shannon and I are incredibly excited to welcome Chuck Patrick. He is currently the head of strategic program management at Axis Capital, but he has spent 30 years doing a variety of roles. Very catalytic of him. Working for computer manufacturer, .com technology startup, running your own management and technology consulting business, and several positions at the commercial insurance industry, where you have been an innovative change and impact agent across that time. I am sure I missed a ton. Chuck, it is a delight to have you with us today.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Good. So because I know I missed so much, would love to invite you to tell us about your catalytic journey. How would you connect the dots across your beautiful career? And what are you most proud of in your catalyst nature?
Yeah, it's a great question. I actually kind of go back to my college days a little bit, and sort of the seeds of how I think I got into the roles that I got into, and ultimately pursued change management and sort of the catalyst mindset. I was an electrical engineer and English major, and it was this really weird dichotomy of technology and then language skills. And that has always sort of followed me throughout my career. I've always been at that juncture between tech and change, but also the people and the how to work with executives and how to work with everyone in the organization to get something done. Being able to understand the sort of technology basis was a key to that. But being able to communicate about it was even more important. So I think that was sort of the genesis in a way of the career that then followed. I think, one of the first times I saw a catalyst in action, so it wasn't me, I was just learning. I was part of a small company, very small. I think it was 6 people when I joined. It was above a pizza place. It was a really unique experience, as I think it was my second job out of school. And we had an individual there who went to a demo that Steve Jobs gave when he was running Next Computer. If you remember, he left Apple for a brief period of time and went to Next. And this gentleman that I worked with saw that demo and made an instant connection to products that we also sold, and that we could basically do some of the things that Steve Jobs was talking about. And that was the first time that I saw someone sort of just like connecting 2 dots that you wouldn't have thought were connected. That same person later took that same idea, and it was, sort of a technology, back in those days, how to connect to databases and have a user interface to them. When the internet started, he made that same connection. He said, hey, all this technology we've been using in these, personal computers, we can move to the internet with it. And that idea totally transformed our company. We went from, a 100-person company into a .com startup that got funding, went public, rode the whole roller coaster up and down. But it was all because of that one person who made those connections and then excited everyone about them.
And what would you pick out for yourself across your career that you feel like have been your catalyst moments?
Yeah, it's it, again, I guess that's also a bit of a journey. So the first phase of my career was really, I would say, on the sell side of things.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in that startup. I was in consulting. I started my own business trying to sell management and technology services. And that was difficult, I would say, to be on the sell side and to try to understand how do you sell something to organizations,
Mm,
which always seemed, they loved the ideas, but they were never able to actually, execute upon them, or it was tough. It was always hard to find the person who could say yes.
mhm,
Um, so then the second phase of my career, I kind of switched into the buy side. I went into corporate America for the first time. I'd always been in small companies, sort of like, services based. But I went to work for a very traditional insurance company, which was Ace at the time, now Chubb. And I started to understand why things were so difficult when I was on the other side of things. uh, Getting change to happen within companies was really difficult. There was just so much invested interest in how things were. Money, there was so much invested in past decisions, the systems that you had bought, the amortization expense that you had incurred now hamstrung you, your ability to change, to anticipate, to develop new ideas and innovations. So I kind of endured that for a while and then really started to get active about it in my current role. So sort of the third phase of my career, I would say, is okay, how do I change that? How do I influence the culture of a company, uh, how it operates to actually, uh, you know, use change to its advantage, and use the dynamics of change to its advantage. So, finding that secret sauce that building it into the company DNA. That's really what I'm after now, in this sort of third phase of my career. I don't know if there'll be a fourth phase, but that's kind of where I am now.
My guess is hearing about your journey that you're going to see that next opportunity and for sure pivot. That's my hypothesis. I'm laying it down now. Are you going to share with us today, Chuck, what the secret sauce is, or is that still secret?
No, I do have some ideas. I think as a acting as an individual catalyst in a way is the easy part. Um, but the secret sauce to me is how do you actually fundamentally change the organization? So you turn it into, and as an individual, I probably can't do this by myself, but if you put the ideas out there and get other like-minded people involved, maybe you can over time. So how does a company, be able to anticipate, to welcome change, to not be afraid of it,
Mm,
to uh, to see the risk of not embracing change? Um, I was thinking about this call, and I was happening to read about Intel Corporation in Morning Brew actually yesterday, and the missteps that they have taken. So when I was in college, Intel was like this brand new company. It was conquering the world, and for years it was the heart of everything Microsoft did. Huge success, and then they kind of missed the whole move to mobile devices, and they lost huge market share and missed out on a massive opportunity that obviously Apple and Samsung and others capitalized on. But then rather than learning from that, they've more recently missed the whole move to AI. So they didn't somehow see that opportunity coming and exploit it, right? They lost out to NVIDIA and other companies like that. And it's really ironic because one of the first things I knew about Intel was a book that one of their founders wrote, Andy Grove, called I think it's only the paranoid survive. Um, and it's a book about, you have to be sort of on the lookout for change and embracing it, but
mm.
somehow they had failed to do that. So, looking for how a company avoids those kind of pitfalls is, I think, part of the secret sauce too. Like, what do you have to put into place uh, so that you have people who are not only recognizing trends and change that's necessary, but being able to influence everyone in the organization to actually execute upon it.
I love this so much. And already you've been sharing with us, kind of some hints at my next question, which is For you, how do you relate to this concept of catalyst? How do you define this?
Yeah. So I think it starts, I mean, you obviously as an individual, you have to be really interested in, achieving change, achieving a goal, an objective, right? You have to be personally invested, and sort of like the foundational layers, you have to be accountable to that, and always be an authentic person about that.
Mhm.
And that's sort of the first level, just from a personal perspective. What I think is super important, most important probably, is just then the relationships that you form within the company, within the ecosystem that you're working within. And it's got to be one that's just completely based on trust. Um, and the catalyst doesn't always have the best ideas. I don't necessarily see those things coming. I didn't make the connection to the internet that this guy I knew did. But if you're surrounded by people who do have that insight, who do think in different ways, I think the catalyst is able to gather that and do something with it. And for me, it's all about leveraging those relationships so that when you do have an idea, you essentially have a platform to stand on. You've got support. When I say leverage relationships, I mean all levels of an organization. I go out on my way to make sure I know who the executive assistants are. I know all the IT help desk guys. But I also foster relationships with senior executives, other departments, and so on, because it gives you a basis for moving forward when you want to, or
Yeah.
when you need to.
Shannon and I continue to learn with folks like you in our Catalyst Leadership Trust. We have done a series of research over this last year. And part of what you're pointing to is what we're hearing that it absolutely takes to move to the executive level as a catalyst, that all the brilliant ideas are, take you so far, but it is about that network and the way you show up with folks and the trust you can build that really, really are going to be the litmus test of how successful you can personally be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Sorry, go ahead, Chuck.
no, I was just going to pile on to the executive point. That is so critical. If you have to establish credibility, and so that means always being accountable, always delivering what you said you were going to deliver, and if you can't, being accountable to it. That builds credibility with executives, and then those executives will listen to you when you have the right idea and the way to go after it.
Yeah, I'm going to pile on too, just to say it's so funny. There's kind of two flavors of catalysts sometimes at the leadership level, and they often will be like, "Am I the catalyst?" Because some people are the dot connectors who are still activating other people to get stuff done. And then some people are the catalysts who are like catching some of the ideas and activating the network to get it across the finish line. And they both look at each other like, well, did I have enough ideas or did I do enough action? But I like sort of that you're calling out. It's like it takes this part for us to take it across the finish line, and it's skills that you have to that most people cultivate over a career in terms of learning both that accountability and the influence and the nuance that you need to show up with to bring the executives along.
Yeah, and it's probably something when I was younger in my career, I probably would have been like, hey, I've got to be more of the idea guy. I've got to find the insights. I've got to, and I know a lot of people like that. Like I know in our company now exactly who they are. And but it's only part of the equation, right? It's
That's right.
only, the idea is just the start of things. It's what you do with it and how you influence people along the way to make it happen that really matters, in my opinion.
100%, which is a great pivot. And I'd love to understand maybe one or two of the challenges that you've faced as a Catalyst executive and maybe a little bit of understanding about what helped you overcome those challenges.
Yeah, I think one of the, and there's sort of like a series of transformations. It always feels like if I look back over the last 15 years of my career, it's sort of been like one transformation followed by another. Transformation of some kind. It could be organizational, it could be technology, it could be processes, things like that, new products, new innovations. And I I think one of the main challenges to achieving those is the energy level and being able to maintain that energy level, not only personally, but for the people who are also part of that change. Very often there will be there's always a kickoff. It's almost like when you buy a new car and it's at its maximum value, but the second you drive off the lot, it starts losing value. It's
Great
almost like at that
analogy.
kickoff, you've got maximum, sort of momentum. People are excited, and then it can start degrading from there. Over time, people get tired, they get tired of the program, things change, new problems emerge, and seeing something through the end. Uh, and I've had several transformations along the way that don't make it to the end. They just sort of like peter out, and people are like, whatever happened to that?
Yeah.
It's I find maintaining that energy level personally and with your team is really tough. And so it's a constant reminder. The way to combat that is, constant reminder of the goals, frequent measurement along the way. Like we are progressing, we are starting
Mm,
to see change or impact from what we're doing. And just trying to give people a constant feedback loop of why you're doing this and reinforce the original reasons for it. And ultimately celebrating, of course, as you achieve those things, right? Give
yeah.
people that energy back.
Are there things that you do outside of work? I love all of the like super concrete things to do in the organization. Are there, I mean, it sounds like as you're describing, you're sort of the font of energy to maintain the movement of change internally. Are there things that you do in your personal life that help support you in that way as well?
Well, I don't know if I feel like the font of energy all the time, but I I mean I definitely I try to I do work from home, and so this is difficult to do sometimes, but I really do try to separate out my personal life from work. Have a hard stop to the day, have a hard start to the day, sort of the same, as if I were commuting. Have the same rituals, if you will, to draw the line between. And so when I'm in my personal life, it's just full of other interests that I think recharge me. So I will read a lot, I will exercise a lot. I do all kinds of different exercises, whether it's weightlifting or running or biking or playing soccer, just a rotation of that. And I think those are the things that keep me sane, but then also give me energy once I return to the work.
Nice. Are there other challenges that you've encountered along the way?
I guess another tough one always, it's nice to think of change as always super positive, and we're going towards something new. We're building the new iPhone or something, revolutionizing the world. But a lot of times, change has sort of a dark side to it because often involves cost cutting and
Mm,
efficiency. I think that's one of the hardest challenges. It's like a part of the game of driving change is the reality is you have to save money ultimately or make money, and so that comes with a human cost. So I find that really difficult to square those two things, like to
yeah.
basically be saying, hey, we all have to do this. It's for the good of the company. We can all achieve what we want to achieve, but there's going to be some people who are not going to be part of that journey anymore. And that's always very difficult to kind of square up and to get others to be okay with that. Um, so
And have you figured, I mean, like it's so spot on in terms of what everyone is experiencing today. And like what we've been hearing, again, going back to the Catalyst Leadership Trust and all of our customers is like the do more with less, as if that's a thing and we're not going to burn people out and all of this stuff. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like, how have you navigated that? Because that fear is real, and we're talking about AI and people perceived or not, or like my job's going to get replaced. How do you stay maybe not the fount of energy, but maintain some positive energy and bring people along and all that fear?
I guess part of me feel well. So one, I've got personal experience with not being part of the journey.
Yeah.
It's happened to me a couple of times in my career, and it's been painful. I've felt just terrible at those moments. But in both situations, I found a better place. So I really believe, wow, that was painful to leave that company, but I've got this new thing that's better, and there's different opportunities. And so I take comfort in that lesson,
Mm-hmm.
my personal lesson, when I see it happening to other people.
Mm-hmm.
That I know that they're good people. I know that they'll be okay. I try to, for people I know, I try to personally help them as much as possible if they're being let go. With whatever I can, references, ideas, whatever I can do to help them, I will. So, but it's something that, a lot of people have to go through, and maintaining the focus on why you're there. It is the good of the organization that you're working for, and you have to believe in sort of a greater good that you're providing, even if it's painful in parts.
It's so hard because I mean, certainly for me, I can speak for me, and I know the data's out there. Like so many of us identify, like our personal identify is so tied to our job and our definition and our role and what we spend the majority of our waking hours doing. And yet, even if we're in the positive realm of creating change, one of the keys to unlocking the ups and downs of change is to not so personally identify with that role. So I'm wondering how you might help mentor or coach people around that in either context, really.
Yeah, and I see this in some of my kids. They get so wrapped up in their jobs and their performance and the worry that they have on it just, every day. I I've always been able to separate it pretty well. I don't really consider, like I don't identify myself as, you know, my job. Like that's not how I introduce myself. I'm a family person. I'm a father. Those are the things that I identify the most with. So I've always been able to sort of hold it at arm's length. I'm all in when I am working, but I can separate it. And I guess that would be the advice, is to just try to get to that point where you can separate it. And a lot of times you worry that, hey, am I performing well enough with, are they gonna, like me or keep me, especially if you're in a, situation where people are being let go or whatever. I think you just have to, say, I'm gonna do the best I can. I'm gonna be the real me. And if that means it doesn't work out at this place, then that's what it means. And I will find better place to go next. So yeah, I think if you buffer yourself sort of again,
That's
mentally,
it.
you
Yeah.
can sort of hold that anxiety off. At least that's what my advice would be to my kids. They don't usually listen though. So
All right. I'm taking up too much time, but you said one other thing that I want your advice on. You were talking about like, how you've been able to lead change and when you see like bringing it into the DNA and everything, and you had a great list. Like you want an organization that can anticipate change, welcome change, not be afraid of it. But one thing you said is help them see the risk of not embracing the change
yeah.
and helping an organization see like a negative that doesn't exist in their mind. Like, how do you do that? And how do you get the executives to lean into that?
Yeah, and it's tricky, and the Andy Grove example comes to mind because only
Right.
the so you do need sort of a dose of paranoia, like what could go wrong,
Yeah.
which is kind of a pessimistic way to think all the time. And you don't want to be the person who cries wolf, right? You don't want to be constantly doom glooming, whatever the word.
Totally.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so I would I think that when I make arguments, I'm trying to use as much logic and data as I can. That it's got to be factual. I think there's always an emotional element. You need to kind of infuse some anxiety into a conversation sometimes to motivate
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
But the real foundation of it is having some facts, a sound argument, and a getting people to understand this is a reasonable risk. Coming from a kind of a project management and program management perspective, I tend to think of things in a very risk-based way, like what could go wrong and what's the and if it went wrong, like how bad would it be and what's the probability of that
Mhm.
happening? And those two
Mhm.
elements together, sort of probability and impact, give you a sense of risk. And so if you can make a case for, hey, this is possible, probable, and if it does happen, the impact could be really great, or it could be negative for us, or if we do this great thing, it could be very positive for us. But being very deliberate about how you make that argument and backing it up with as much data and other kinds of analysis as you can.
Yeah, I love the data that triggers the emotion. It's such a powerful duo there, right? It's like
Mhm.
speaking to the head and the heart, so that just is unambiguous when they walk out of the room. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah,
Great
yeah,
insight.
and I guess the other thing that you want to do as a catalyst, I always felt like, when I think about a job, I want to be inspired. I want to wake up every day and I want to feel like I'm doing good in some way. I'm feeling personally into it, satisfied. I understand what I'm doing, and I want to be inspired and want to get out of bed and start working. So that emotional aspect is really important. And so trying to inspire that in others, what makes them inspired, what can they get behind? And sometimes it's the facts and the logic, but it's also, okay, what's the urgency? What's the emotional outcome? How, we're all going to be happy. We're all going to be satisfied with something. That's really a super important part of it, because that's really where the motivation comes from, I think, for most people.
Coming back to your journey around this in your third phase, right? And Shannon was just pulling the thread here of helping, organizations use change. What is it that you're doing right now in this realm? I'm hearing your wisdom of, help them see the risk. So what does this actually look like in implementation these days?
Yeah. So, and I'm in a relatively new role
Okay.
right now. So so what I've taken on is several portfolios of change portfolios for different functions and parts of the business. Um, so I've got executive sponsors of each of these areas. They are essentially all in charge of their own, let's call it their own change plans.
Mm,
What do they need to improve on? What do they need to do with systems? What do they need to do with process? What do they need to do with their culture, their people? And each of them has to be sort of, what I'm trying to do is lead them to a vision of what they want to accomplish and put together essentially the arguments, the rationale, the business justification, the cost benefit analysis in some cases of what that's going to take. And so what I'm ultimately trying to do is give them the mechanism to achieve what they're trying to achieve as business leaders. Um, and that to me is, I've always tried to focus on how, who do I need to make successful? Like I want to make and empower people to be successful, because then I know I'm going to be successful if I do that. And so as I look at each of these business leaders, that's really my mission now. How do I help each of them achieve what they're trying to achieve? And sometimes those things are in conflict with each other. So that's where the interesting part comes in, I guess.
you've helped me see something. I think you probably know Shannon and I are both executive coaches. And within organizational context, it's not unusual for executives all to have a coach. But you're helping me see just a vital role in the future of a change coach.
100%.
Right? That, there are organizational development departments that help, kind of think about this and how are we going to orchestrate it and how do we work with communications. But you are this tactical bridge
Yeah.
for each leader to take what's coming down and what we're sensing into the future and assessing the risk and actually do those basics of what's the vision. How are you going to be communicating that? How are you staying on top of what happens as you like? I've never seen it before, Chuck. I've never seen it.
It's such a great role. I was thinking the same thing. And the last point that you ended on is so critical, because if you have all of these transformation or change initiatives with all of these executive sponsors, you'd think in theory that they would all know, but the brass tacks of what that means from a resources perspective or a culture perspective or the KPIs, like all of the levers,
Yep.
then there's the potential for conflict. And you can be like, hey guys, ladies, like we
Yeah.
need to rectify this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
interesting. They're lucky to
Yeah.
have you, and well done carving out that position. Like, how did that happen?
Yeah. Gosh, I don't know. I seem to find my way into these kinds of positions for some reason, but I, it's but it really is, in a way, it's simple. I mean, it really is just understanding kind of what their problem set is and what their opportunity set is, and then putting those things together into something that you can then execute. And the execution is a big part of it too. So it's not just the idea and hey, here's a great roadmap for the next 3 years. It's okay, now how do we actually execute on this, deliver what we said we would deliver and when, at the level of quality that you need to succeed.
100%.
And that's also difficult to do, and you really need a team around you to do that well.
Yeah. My mind is exploding so happily. Really have never seen this role that is so incredibly obvious now that you have shared this. So thank you. So you have been a member of our Catalyst Leadership Trust, which we mentioned earlier, and would love to take a moment, given that you've been sharing the power of building relationships. What role has the CLT, the Catalyst Leadership Trust, played for you as an executive?
I think what it's done is really sort of broadened my horizons a little bit. And as and I mentioned my career earlier, I've been, sort of in commercial insurance, specialty insurance companies. Many would argue that they are the laggards of technology innovation in the world, right? What could be more boring than an insurance company? Um, I don't think that's true, but when I engage with with other catalysts, the diversity of experience and thought is really great. Like, it's totally different in many cases. It's the same in a lot of ways thematically, but just the kinds of challenges that I hear others have faced and how they've tackled those, be it very small companies or very large ones or totally different industries, that has been really interesting to me because I can draw ideas from that, and it really has helped me try to come up with my own strategies to apply within my own company.
I love it. Are there challenges that you find are unique in a Catalyst group?
Um, it is I probably the mobilization of good ideas. So
Mm,
there, it kind of gets back to that. Yeah, there's lots of great ideas. There may even be obvious ideas. Like in the Intel example, I'm sure somebody was saying, "Hey, we should move to mobile," or "Hey, what about AI? Shouldn't we be focused on that?" And they didn't listen to them for some reason, right? So, um, yeah, the ideas have to find legs and go somewhere. That's a challenge I've heard from other catalysts.
I love
Um,
that. Just in our conversation with the Catalyst Leadership Trust last month, this was a huge aha. Someone literally said it's not just innovation, it's not just transfer, it's not the great ideas, but how do we help spearhead the implementation?
mhm,
What does
yep,
it mean to be dealing with your peer set through the resistance? What does it mean to actually educate layers of leadership and help understand exactly the way that you're helping, the folks that you're working with in their portfolios? And again, it was such an obvious thing, but something that still kind of hit me in this really new way. So thank you for framing that.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And it's really challenging to, yeah, I mean, just the getting people to change en masse is really tough to do because there's
Mhm.
so many intricacies and nuances and histories to everyone's little story and how their group has always worked or how that group has always worked or rivalries between people. I mean, there's
Yeah.
a lot to unpack, and you really have to be thoughtful about it, find the right levers to pull to do that. And so so the great idea is nice, but it's just the starting point.
It's spot on. Someone said actually in that conversation, she was like, my peers are afraid of me. Like, I'm here to create change. And my peers are afraid of me. So I love everything that you just said, because like that intentionality and like the sensing, like, hey, let's pay attention to that. But then let's develop a strategy. Because without the strategy and the relentless focus on execution, it's not going to matter. So
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for sharing. And I get the fun question today. So I would love to hear maybe who your favorite catalyst is, past or present, and why they inspire you.
So I actually had a couple of them, and this one seems like a gimme, or but so our current CEO at Access Capital is fantastic. I've been there 11 years. He took over as CEO about 18 months ago, I think. And the amount of change that he has driven in just 18 months has been incredible. Um, and it was always a good company with great people and culture, but we were, sort of in the, I don't know, in the performance realm, sort of middle of the pack. And we always felt like, what is missing? What is this element that we can't quite get to the top? And our current CEO, Vince Tizio, has found that somehow. And so I've watched him, just his style. He's incredibly down to earth and personable with people, but he's also incredibly driven and tough in a really positive way.
Right.
So there's a tone about achievement and accountability, but
Yes.
then he's bringing people along emotionally. So that's just been really good to see, and I'm really excited
Congratulations,
for
Chuck. That must be awesome for you.
yeah. I mean, yeah, our stock price is like way up. Our performance is, we just had our best quarterly results that I've ever seen in 11 years. I mean, it's just been great stuff.
Congrats.
Great stuff. Um,
Do you
the
think he's a
second,
catalyst?
I think he's a,
Yeah, he's a favorite catalyst. Sorry. Yeah. I asked you.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
he's definitely a catalyst. Different kind of catalyst, and
Totally. Totally.
it's a sort of a top-down catalyst.
Yeah. You need
Um,
those too, though, right? Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah,
I didn't mean to
yeah.
cut you off. So you have more. I love that you have
No,
more.
no. So the other one's a little more fun, maybe. So I mentioned I'm a huge soccer player and coach and fan. And I don't know if you're familiar with Welcome to Wrexham. Um,
Not.
so the story of this, so it's a series, it's docu-series, I guess. And if you know Rob McElhenney, um, and uh, geez, I'm blanking. Um, yeah, Ryan Reynolds. I don't know how I forget Ryan Reynolds. So they're Hollywood actors, and they bought a soccer team in Wales called Wrexham, and this soccer team is like pretty low in the scale of professional soccer. And these guys were total catalysts to what, essentially said, we're going to take this low end soccer team and we're going to make it into something. We're going to make it a premier team in the world. And they've started that process, and they injected money, of course, but it's more about what they did with the team and the town that supports that team. And so the docuseries is all about that, and how they affected this change, how they excited people, how they just transformed the entire culture from, sort of like a cynical, we always lose, we've lost for 100 years, into something that's really turning it. I mean, and they're kind of like moving up in the world over the last 3 years. So another one that's in process, but that's a real fun one to watch too. Like, how do
I'm
these guys?
excited to watch that now. So
I
where
can't
is it
wait
on
to watch
Netflix
that.
or where is
Yes.
it?
Yeah, I think it's on Netflix. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll
Okay.
have to
Welcome
put
to
that in the
Wrexham.
show notes too. What I just like tying the thread between that, the power of like one or two leaders to inspire and like, but have developed that culture of accountability. Like those two things make people teams almost unstoppable. So I like that thread sort of through this whole conversation from you, really, Chuck.
Yeah, yeah,
Sounds like
absolutely.
you
Is that
embody that actually.
it really is that combination of, sort of like it's kind of like logic and objectives and being driven, but the whole emotional side of it, which is really important to keep motivation going.
You must be a great coach.
I try to be. I'm amazed. I've been coaching now for probably 30 years. I feel like I don't know what I used to do. I learn so much every year. It's like, wow, how did I not know that before? It's like it's incredible. So I guess it's an evolution, but
Power
hopefully.
of growth mindset. Thanks for embodying that, Chuck,
Yeah.
this has been a total joy and pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us and our audience.
Oh, absolutely welcome. Really enjoyed it.
So fun. And to our listening audience, thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to learn more about how to create bold, powerful change in the world, be sure to check out our book, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burn Out, or go to our website at catalystconstellations.com.
And if you enjoyed this episode, like Shannon and I both did, please take 10 seconds to rate it on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you have other catalysts in your life, hit the share button and send a link their way.
Thanks again.